You want a show that knows. This is the show that knows. It's Steph Sheppard. Steph Sheppard. Go with what she knows. Turn on, tune in.
Okay, folks, here we go.
89.7 KLAS.
Metropolitan area.
KLAS FM. Get real with Steph. I said get real.
Hey, what up, everybody? This is Wee Matt. You're listening to Steph Get Real on KLAS FM.
All right. Yeah, you are listening to me here, Steph Get Real, on KLAS 89.7 FM. The weather is beautiful. The traffic is absolutely crappy. It's Los Angeles. What can you do? It's Thanksgiving Day weekend. So expect that from now until the beginning of the year, it's going to be crappy no matter what. Everybody who and their mother who never drive are all out on the road trying to be morons and not use their blinkers and not alert you to which way they are trying to go and being oblivious to everybody else around them. So do be careful. I also would like to suggest that you all be water wise. Be water wise. California, conserve water, drink more alcohol. This should lower your inhibitions enough to make you feel more inclined to shower with a friend or two. So get out there and conserve some water, Californians. We are all counting on you. For more tips on water conservation, go to bewaterwise.com. You know, it is Thanksgiving Day weekend. People are going to be cooking their turduckens and out there deep frying their turkeys. You're going to want some water if you're deep frying a turkey, you know, or at least a water hose readily available and right there next to you so that you can, in fact, put out a fire if you need to. Don't spray water into hot oil, though, because that would be a disaster. But that's for another day, another topic, another, thing. Today, I'm going to be getting real with the expert from the California Brain Tumor Association. He is also a co-founder in the We Are the Evidence bioinitiative.org. His name is Kevin Modess, and he is, in fact, a expert on, let's call it, wireless radiation effects. I personally have been feeling these effects lately. I got a new job where I'm on the phone constantly and using my app constantly, and I have to be on the Wi-Fi, and I believe that it is having adverse effects on me, truthfully. I think that it is really, it's giving me migraine headaches, and it makes the back of my eyeballs hurt, and, could possibly lead to tingling in my hands and other effects like that as well, because I have it in my hands all the time and I'm constantly using it. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin here in just a few minutes, and we're going to listen to him, because this is the effects that happen to all of us, you guys. This is something that happens to everyone in the world that has a smartphone or is, subjected to wireless communications in any way, shape, or form, which is pretty much everybody now. I know you guys probably have your wireless routers and stuff in your house, and those are giving you adverse effects. Additionally, I did see a study recently that these girls had done. They were 16-year-old girls, and they were doing it on the effects of wireless and how it affects you, or at least growth in that respect. They put seeds, like sprouting seeds, right next to a Wi-Fi transmitter. And then they put sprouting seeds inside a microwave, shielding it from the microwave radiation that the transmitter was putting out. And the seeds in the microwave grew, and the sproutlings up top did not. So obviously that's pretty darn dangerous. And we're being exposed to this on a regular basis. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 or 66 days a year. So I would like for you guys to listen to this guy, Kevin. He is not just a guy. He is, in fact, the expert from the California Brain Tumor Association. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kevin.
Hey, Steph, thank you so much for having me. Wireless radiation health effects, it's important because everyone's being exposed right now, and the FCC, our government, well, specifically the FCC, is determined to blanket us with microwave radiation, and that's really the agenda. And I understand your concerns, and people are getting sick. Our best evidence that there's a problem is people themselves developing symptoms. And wireless radiation can cause cancer, it can cause neurological effects, immune system problems, and reproductive harm. If you're wondering why all these young people are getting strange immune system problems like fibromyalgia and things like that, you have to rule out wireless radiation. If you're wondering why young people are developing cancer, ovarian cancer, brain tumors, tumors in the site near where wireless transmitters are held, you really have to rule out wireless radiation exposure. If you're wondering why people are developing headaches, like you were talking about, dizziness, like you mentioned to me, things like nausea, and they're young people and should be healthy, you have to rule out wireless radiation exposure. People need to understand that wireless uses microwaves to transmit. This is the basic bottom line. And the industry, and when I talk about the industry, people say, what do you mean by the industry? What I mean is the CTIA. CTIA is the lobby group that represents all the wireless industry. And they act in their behalf. They spend money to miseducate and to hide health effects. And they've been very active in all places that matter. They've been very active in Congress, and Congress is funding these wireless projects. Congress has oversight over the FCC, and Congress and the CTIA influences state and local government representatives also, who are allowing these wireless transmitters being put near our homes and blanketing our communities with wireless radiation. The problem is the FCC regulates wireless radiation exposure. And things you need to know about is that the FCC is an auctioning agency. They auction off spectrum. They're not a health and safety agency, yet they hold the health and human exposure standard for wireless radiation. This is one of the critical problems at the top, but it was done on purpose. The FCC wants control of this because they want to hide health effects, and the FCC has developed and maintains a safety standard, which isn't a safety standard. It's a safety guideline. It's a safety suggestion. And when they put wireless in our schools, when they put wireless in places where people know it's not a healthy idea, and they can simply Google wireless radiation health effects and see all kinds of studies showing health effects, when they say, hey, this is a bad idea, these institutions like schools, for instance, they'll say, well, we're well within the FCC guidelines. Now, these guidelines, people need to understand, only protect against thermal exposure or thermal heating or acute burning. So anything before heating or burning is not accounted for by our FCC guidelines. And I work with 200 scientists from 35 countries. And one of our scientists said, you know, this is ridiculous. Of course things happen to the cells before they get heated or burned. And we do know what happens. We have the mechanism now for how wireless radiation causes cellular damage. It's through oxidative stress. And that is, the cells are hit by billions of waves, and people need to understand that Wi-Fi in your home, it works on 2.4 gigahertz. And what that means is 2.4 billion waves per second, electromagnetic waves per second, passing through you in transmitting information. And you also need to understand that we are electromagnetic. Our cells are electromagnetic. Our cells operate electromagnetically, they repair electromagnetically, and your heart and your brain, for instance, have their own electrical current. It works at about 8 to 10 hertz, or 8 to 10 waves per second. Now we're passing, for instance, just plain old Wi-Fi, which is 2.4 billion waves per second, passing it through those cells. And what happens to the cells is they feel like this is a harm to them, this is an injury to them, and they close up. And when they close up to protect themselves, a couple things happen. First, free radicals build up. And we know from free radicals building up that you have, over time, cellular damage that can lead to cancer. The other thing is when these cells close up, sometimes they don't communicate as well to other cells. And so you see immune system problems. That is, cells not communicating well with each other. And also you see when these cells close up that you have neurological problems. That is, the wiring of the neurology just kind of going haywire in trying to adapt to this foreign injury. And so we have the mechanism. The industry says, this is ridiculous. This is non-ionizing radiation. It doesn't heat, so it can't hurt. And there is no mechanism. First, that's simply untrue. There's actually more than one mechanism, because these are billions of waves per second, and they're affecting all systems of our body. And there's mechanisms that are causing, different mechanisms that they're causing harm. But to say we don't have a mechanism is simply untrue. I have a study, and people can go to a couple resources and learn more about what I'm talking about. One of the resources is the Bioinitiative report at bioinitiative.org. bioinitiative.org. There you'll see they've reviewed 1,800 studies on this round, and it's a report that looks at a variety of studies and looking at how microwave radiation affects basically all systems of our body and breaks down the effects by body area. And they reviewed 1,800 studies, but they also reviewed 1,800 studies in the past. So now it's 3,600 studies they've looked at. And when the industry says there's no evidence of harm, they're simply lying. There's thousands of studies showing health effects from wireless radiation. I have a naval medical report back in the 70s that chronicled 3,700 studies looking at microwave radiation effects. And that's what this really is. People who are developing headaches and problems like you, they call them electrosensitive. But that was the term, electrically sensitive, or EHS, or electrohypersensitive. And that's a term that was coined by the industry to say, oh, these people are just too sensitive. When actually, going back to the 70s, people were getting sick from microwave radiation. People need to understand microwaves are not new to us, and microwave sickness is what it used to be called, and what it still is, or microwave syndrome. If people want to look up microwave sickness or syndrome, you'll see studies going back decades, because remember, in the 70s, we still had microwaves. We had the microwaves that was used by radar or naval ships, and some of the first microwave syndrome was documented by the Naval Medical Research Institute, and we didn't have the internet then, so they cited themselves 3,700 studies. And I have a Naval Medical report from the 70s that articulates 23 pages of typical biological effects that the Navy men were getting on the cruisers that were using radar. But we also had other things. We had two-way radio, and two-way radio used microwave transmissions as well. We also had UHF TV back then, and people were getting sick around the towers for TV. So we had these health effects well before our cellular technology was introduced. And that's why when it was introduced, there was tremendous effort to hide health effects from the beginning. People need to understand the EPA used to regulate or used to look at what biological effects, and they had been doing their own studies. They had their own scientists that were finding the same kind of biological effects we were seeing now. Again, cancerous effects, neurological effects, immune system problems, and reproductive harm. They saw them in the beginning. And we have documentation that they proposed to the FCC a thermal and non-thermal standard. But unfortunately, after they went to the FCC saying we're planning on installing a thermal and non-thermal stem from participating in any more EMF activities, that is electromagnetic frequency research activities. So the agency that really should be regulating this, the EPA, was taken out of the loop very early on in the game, even though we saw these biological effects that we're seeing now really on epidemic proportions way back then. So there was a conscious, and that's why I say there has been a conscious and careful effort and well-funded effort to hide biological effects from wireless radiation. So this is very serious because now our government, unfortunately, is moving aggressively to roll out a new type of wireless technology. So we had 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now we're at 5G. But 5G is a huge departure from the past. People need to understand your cell phone uses about 1 gigahertz to up to about 4 or 5 gigahertz for Wi-Fi. But 5G is a huge jump, and it's going from 24 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. This is a very dense, intense type of microwave radiation they're using. If you want to imagine it this way, the microwaves for our current wireless are about 2 to 3 or 4 feet long, and they travel pretty well as a result. This new wireless is down to 1 inch to half an inch waves, very dense, very intense microwaves, and they're being used because they carry a lot of data. The problem with these new microwaves, they're actually called millimeter waves because they're so tiny and narrow, is they don't travel very well, and because they don't travel very well, you have to put transmitters about every 2 to 10 homes. This is a big problem because what we know about around cell towers is that there are cancer clusters around cell towers pretty much all over the world. And we have studies from different parts of the world. We have studies from Poland, I was looking at today, France, Brazil, Germany, all showing an increase in cancer around cell tower transmitters. We also see an increase in neurological effects as you get closer to the cell towers. So we already have a problem with wireless radiation causing health effects around cell towers that we have. But most people don't live near a cell tower, fortunately. But with 5G, that's going to all change. They now have to put cell towers about every 2 to 10 homes, depending on your layout and your situation and what they want to do. And so if you didn't live near a cell tower before, you are going to now. And what's happened in Montgomery County in Maryland, they began a pilot program for 5G, and they started permitting transmitters. And understand this, they were in a complex or development with about 700 homes, and they were proposing 300 transmitters. That means about every other home was going to get a cell tower transmitter. And once the community found out about this, they were in an uproar because you have to understand, in this community, all their utilities were underground because it looks better. And for lots of reasons, it's safer and healthier. But because wireless transmitters have to be above ground, they were planning on putting poles in front of people's homes. And these were homes that were millions and millions of dollars, putting poles in front of their homes and sticking a transmitter on top of the pole. This was the plan. Once the community found out about this, they were completely outraged because these are well-resourced people, and all you have to do is Google it and look, and you will see literally thousands of studies showing biological effects from literally our microwaving of our people. And there's 2 websites I want to point people to, bioinitiative.org, that looks at 3,600 studies, and I mentioned it before, but it's a tremendous resource, and also saferemr.com, saferemr.com. This is out of UC Berkeley School of Public Health, and they've been following the research for years, and they vet all the research, and people should go there as an easy way to learn about what's happening. When you go to that site, go to the right, click on Index, and it organizes all the studies and reports in a very organized fashion. You can choose what you want. So that's done by a scientist there named Joel Moskowitz, and he's done an excellent job looking at it. But for the industry to say that this is a fringe issue, that these are just some people that are getting sick and they simply have mental disorders, is simply untrue. They have worked hard to marginalize this issue when the reality is we're finding that a huge portion of people are getting sick from this. We're looking at studies that are estimating that from 20 to 30% of people are developing neurological problems from wireless radiation. This means sleep disorders, headaches, dizziness as you were experiencing, nausea, things like this, and they don't have no idea it's related to wireless radiation. So This is not an issue for the minority. We're talking about 20 to 30% of our population, and it's just going to get worse because right now we have lower frequency waves in our current wireless system, and now we're going to put on top of that ultra high frequency waves with the new 5G, so that we are going to be thoroughly blanketing our population with microwave radiation. And if you didn't get sick from the lower frequencies, you may get sick from the higher frequencies or the combination of the two. What's happening here is truly, truly criminal. We are literally microwave radiating our population. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is a form of domestic terrorism because people are getting sick from this. People are dying from brain tumors from cell phones. People are getting so sick neurologically from simple smart meters on their homes, they have to leave their home. This is really a denial of our basic rights, and it's been done very consciously and very carefully. And I think people should be outraged, and people should definitely get involved because these transmitters are coming to your home this year. That's the plan. That's the plan, and people should be outraged. And people who weren't political should get political. And people that weren't environmentalists should start looking to protect the environment because that environment is going to be making them sick. So what can people do? People need to contact their federal representatives. They need to contact the FCC that is doing all of this and is approving of all of this. They need to contact the media and start talking about this and get this out there because people think no one is upset about this when they actually are tremendously upset and they think no one's getting sick, but they really are. I ask people to contact me. Please contact me if you do feel like you're getting sick from wireless radiation because we need people willing to say they're getting sick. And it's not old people who are getting sick. It's young people who are getting sick because they're using the most wireless, they're getting exposed to the most radiation, and they're getting sick from it. So you can contact me, and I'll give you my email. It's 5gharmful@gmail.com. 5G, just the number 5G, harmful@gmail.com. I definitely want to hear from you, but I also want to hear from people who can help us push back. And that means lawyers who can help push this back because it's the lawyers that have facilitated all this. They have empowered the FCC and the industry to do this to us. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say to do this to us. People need to understand that the law was passed in 1996 called the 1996 Telecom Act. In that act was Section 704. What this section said was that only the FCC can regulate and develop environmental standards for wireless. Okay? But that was interpreted by the courts to include health and safety. So since 1996, when you put a cell tower in your neighborhood, you'll go there, and maybe some of you have been to these meetings because I've been to many. You'll go to these zoning meetings, and you'll go in and they'll say, well, you can come in, Kevin, and you can say whether you want this cell tower in your neighborhood or not, but you simply can't talk about health and safety. This is how they start and open the meeting, is there. In the United health and safety of its citizens and residents. That's what this law did. They had to do that because if they didn't do that, I could come there with literally thousands of studies, hundreds of experts to say, look, there is plenty of conclusive, absolutely conclusive evidence that shows you should not put this transmitter near my family, near my school, in the park. But that's been banned by the 1996 Telecom Act. That's why I say the lawyers have done this to us, and now we need lawyers to fight back. So if you're a lawyer and you can help, we need your help. We're getting outmanned. We're getting outmuscled. This is an issue of really financial might and power over right, because it's wrong to microwave poison our population, but that's what we're doing. And we're doing it with tremendous enthusiasm. If people are good at organizing, I need your help too. We need people to help get other people together because everyone's fighting this individually. In different corners of the country, there are little fights everywhere. People fighting for their neighborhoods, fighting for their schools, fighting for their parks to try to keep their kids from getting microwaved. And kids are getting sick. Kids are getting cancer from this. Kids are dying from this. It's not an exaggeration. It's just what's happening. So 5gharmful@gmail.com. 5gharmful@gmail.com. What else do we need? We need people who are good with social media to help get the word out and wake people up, just to make the connections, just like for you, make the connections between the symptoms you're having and the technology so they can reduce the symptoms by reducing the exposure. Simple as that. I've talked to these young people that have been sick for 8 years, and they had no idea what it was. They finally figured it out. Well, with social media, we can get the word out. Okay? Some people, they don't like to do the work, but they love raising money. We need help with this. We're raising money we're raising money to fight cancer. We're raising money to fight dementias. Meanwhile, we're not looking at the main source of what's happening right now. That we know wireless radiation increases cancer. We know if you're in cancer treatment, you shouldn't be exposed to more wireless radiation, that it facilitates the growth of cancer cells. We have all this money going into cancer research, and we're not putting any money into prevention. We have the prevention. We can take a major step to reduce cancer in our society. We need your help fundraising for that. If you don't like doing the work, donate to us. A little bit of money will go a long way. We are a grassroots effort, basically formed by people who have gotten sick and they've realized, absolutely, I'm the evidence. I'm the evidence. I'm getting sick, so I know this is happening. Just like people like you. Hey, what's going on? Yes, you're the evidence. So we need people's help, and we need people's help now, because they're rolling out these bills quickly to basically form a mesh network of wireless radiation in all ways, and to also at the same time handcuff your ability to say no. SB 649 passed the Assembly and the Senate, and luckily was vetoed by Governor Brown. Thank you, Governor Brown. He vetoed SB 649 that was going to say you can put any transmitter in front of your home, and you cannot say no to it for any reason. You can't say no because it's ugly. You can't say no because it reduces your property value. You can't say no for health, safety, or environmental reasons. You could say no for no reason. It also said not only small cell transmitters for these 5G, and by the way, that's another big lie of the industry. They're not small cells. They can be as big as a refrigerator. Okay? That not only small cells can go in front of your house, any size cell tower could go in front of your house, and you won't be able to reject it for any reason. It was going to take the 1996 Telecom Act and make it even worse. And not only that, it was also okaying AirGig, which is by AT&T's AirGig. Okay, so if you Google AirGig, you'll see AT&T is very proud of its newest technology, where it puts wireless on the outside of power lines and emits the wireless on the outside, along the outside of the power lines, so that they'll be transmitting wireless radiation. AT&T has single-handedly worked incredibly hard and invested in hiding health effects and compromising your health. AT&T is single-handedly compromising your community and doing it in the name of progress and jobs and all these nice things. Meanwhile, they know they're hiding health effects because all these companies are getting sued. They're all getting sued, and if you go in their annual report and you look in their legal section, they'll talk about all the lawsuits that's happening, that have happened, and they're going to continue to happen because people are getting sick. Look in their own annual reports. The other thing is, look in your insurance at home. Look at your homeowner's insurance. Look at your business insurance. You'll see under general exclusions, electromagnetic radiation, electromagnetic fields, etc. That is because the insurance industry has classified wireless radiation as a high-risk agent, and they're not willing to insure wireless radiation health effects because there's simply too much evidence that people are getting sick, and there's simply too much scientific evidence that is being ignored. Who's it being ignored by? It's being ignored by the FCC. They control the Health and Human Standard, and they've held tight control over it. They're ignoring the science. They're ignoring the complaints. If you go to the FCC, you'll see you're allowed to make comments. They're ignoring the hundreds and thousands of comments of people getting sick because they represent the industry. The FCC's chairman, who just left with the change of administration, was Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler is the former CEO of CTIA, the Wireless Trade Organization. So the FCC regulates the Health and Human Exposure Standard, and the FCC is controlled by the wireless industry itself. It's a massive conflict of interest
Okay,
to
you
the
gotta
point
let
of
me
being
cut
criminal.
in right there because I've had this theory about the FCC forever. I think they control everything and that nobody controls them.
Yeah, now the Senate, the Congress does have oversight over the FCC. The FCC does act in the name of the Congress, and so people reaching out to Congress can affect the FCC. But they have reached into areas they shouldn't reach. They have pushed people they shouldn't be pushing. They are basically acting as if they were a private company because they are. They're really working in the name of private companies, and that's the problem. They're a federal agency that's been captured. And Harvard University put out a report, and I'm happy to share it with people if they email me, and you may be able to find it. I'll give you another site you can find that. Environmental Health Trust, EHT, or Environmental Health Trust, has the FCC report done by Harvard University's legal department talking about how they're a captured agency. Because Tom Wheeler is the former president of CTIA, CEO of CTIA, but the new FCC chairman is a former Verizon attorney. And you have entrepreneurs, wireless entrepreneurs. You have wireless industry insiders and Congress staff that have promoted the industry for years as the FCC commissioners, and they have to authorize everything that happens wirelessly. And they have. They've acted to facilitate it. With 5G, they are opening up the spectrum. They are rolling out 3 or 4 times more wireless spectrum than have ever been opened. People need to understand the vision of 5G. The vision of 5G is not to connect people. We already have 98% connectivity of people. That's not the issue. And the industry lies in saying this is just going to help us connect even more. That's not the issue. Okay? This is the Internet of Things. The idea is to connect things. Okay? And the vision is to have 500 transmitters per home. And that these things, there are going to be transmitters in your refrigerator, there's going to be transmitters in your stove, there are going to be transmitters in your forks and knives, they even say. And everything's going to be connected and everything's going to be communicating with each other. The problem is that puts you in the middle of a soup of wireless radiation. So the vision itself is tremendously unhealthy. And people in these smart homes, these new smart homes, are reporting getting sick. This one woman can send the article, she says, my smart home almost killed me. That's the vision for the nation.
Yeah,
and
I see that coming that way, and I was going to touch upon that a little bit about like AirGig, like you said. That just brings with Google Alexa and our smart TVs and our smart refrigerators and our smart units a whole new ball game of basically being exposed to this.
Absolutely, and people need to understand this is about connecting things. And why would you want to do this? Well, these companies sell transmitters. So they want to sell more transmitters. And this vision sells a lot of transmitters. Also, lining your streets with transmitters every 2 to 10 homes sells a lot of transmitters.
Right. Well, does that mean that I can put a radio transmitter out in front of my home and start broadcasting straight from there?
You'll be able to probably do that pretty soon. With 5G, I imagine. But understand this, the idea is to sell transmitters, and the idea is to sell data. They want your data. They want to know what you're doing in your homes at all times. They want to know when you get up to go to the refrigerator. They want to know what you get out of the refrigerator. They want to know what you're doing in your homes. And they want to sell this data. And like we've seen
Google
for the internet,
and like Nielsen were taking care of that for us.
Oh, not to the degree that they're going to be with the Internet of Things. They will have complete information on you. And the fight right now is who's going to control that information. Because as we know with the apps, the money is really in the information. This is going to make the actual wireless services seem like nothing in terms of profits. So they want your data, but people should be really just outraged by this because they're violating your privacy in the most intimate ways.
What do they need this data for?
They want to sell it because information is power, and they want that power. But people should say, you know what? Not in my home. My home should be my sanctity, my sanctuary. Not anymore, because that's the idea. This 5G and the way it's being rolled out is violating our rights to privacy. But it's also violating our right to protect our home, our property. Because, you know, when they put a tower in front of if you're one of the homes with a transmitter in front of your home, and people get sick from those transmitters and you can't take them down, the value of your home is going to go down because people aren't going to want to live in a home with a transmitter in front, as they shouldn't. Also, it violates your right to protect yourself and your health. It violates your rights to protect your family. It violates almost all of our basic civil rights, and they're getting away with it. And I think, really, they're getting away with murder. Understand this, I'm with the California Brain Tumor Association, and people are definitely dying from brain tumors from cell phone radiation. People need to understand this, and they should Google it. LeBron James had a tumor removed from his jaw. He had a salivary gland tumor. I want people to Google LeBron James spring surgery. LeBron James spring surgery. You'll see he had a salivary gland tumor removed where he holds his cell phone. Now you have to ask yourself, why is probably our healthiest, most able-bodied citizen developing a tumor in his jaw? Well, Israel's done their own studies, and they've seen an association, an increase of salivary gland tumors related to cell phone radiation, and they're warning. Their health department is warning their population. They have a website explaining to people what non-ionizing radiation is and how to reduce it. Not in this country.
Now, okay, I think what you're touching upon in this country and what they talk about in this country is the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
And
so the electromagnetic
and the levels that it of radiation or the radio waves that it produces, right?
Yeah, electromagnetic spectrum just represents the whole spectrum of electromagnetic fields. But I work with Dr. Martin Blank. He's a cellular biologist from Columbia University, and he explains, and what they're seeing is that they really see biological effects along the spectrum, really along the spectrum. But they're seeing them to varying degrees and in different ways. What the problem with 5G and the new frequencies is they're going to pulse more, okay? And they're going to be more highly modulated. That is, they're going to carry more data. And what they're finding is that the biological effects aren't so much from power and heating, which is what our current standards are based on, but more about the pulsation, how much the waves bang our cells up. And they see it as being disturbing to the cells, and how much they're modulated. That data they carry on the wave seems, as it goes through the cells, seems to disturb and damage the cell. That waves that aren't modulated, that aren't carrying information, seem to cause less damage. And that's why the wireless industry is doing studies without modulation, because they want to hide health effects that way. They know where the health effects are. You know, what's interesting is when you're around these wireless executives, they don't use wireless. You know, they're not using it themselves. And what's interesting is a lot of executives from the IT world are sending their kids to Waldorf schools. Waldorf schools don't use technology. So it's funny that the guys that are rolling this stuff out know something that we don't know. So yes, we have to worry about the whole spectrum, but what we're worried about with 5G is this is expected to be much more harmful. Another thing out of Israel is Israel's done a study, and if you go to Environmental Health Trust, they should have this study. If not, you can email me and I can send it to you. Again, I'm at 5gharmful@gmail.com. Israel's done an important study showing that our skin acts as little antennae to these little millimeter waves. That is, our skin is made up basically of tubes with fluid in them, and they are conductive. And so when these millimeter waves hit your skin, that your skin actually holds it, and so therefore you're going to have more of an effect and more biological impact. So you're talking about damage to the skin, cataracts, cancer, things of that nature. And this is what they're planning on putting in front of our home and exposing it to us 24/7 without any ability for us to say no.
Yeah, they're basically taking away our landlines and any possible way of us communicating versus, or via, anything safe, and putting us in harm's way without telling us, essentially.
Yeah, so let's talk about the safe alternatives. That's a good point.
What can we do
what can we do about this? Okay, so what are we asking? What we're asking for is that they use a wired solution. That is fiber optic, which is thousands of times faster than wireless because it doesn't have to be transmitted from one transmitter to another. They use fiber optic and wired connections inside the home. That is a safe solution which gives you internet, not just good internet, but better internet. It's more cyber secure because none of these wireless systems are secure from cyber attack. There's a whole industry.
I was just going to say, because I was talking to the cable company the other day, a friend of mine does not want to have wireless router in his house. And so he was talking to the cable company, and basically they're making him trade over.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about the cable company is they have 2 wireless routers in most of the cable boxes now. One of them you can turn off, which is great. You can turn it off, and people should know you can turn off one of those transmitters. But the other one you can't, and it's supposed to go to the street. But it's not really, I think, designed for the street. I think it's designed to be exposing your living space so they can start collecting data now. So people should be very concerned about that. But you can go online and get a router that doesn't have the wireless transmitters in it. And you can turn off the wireless in other types of transmitters for other companies and just plug in the back, and what I do in my home is I use wired connection to the phone. I use a landline, which doesn't run out of power and is safe and healthy. I use wired connections to the internet, so I have a wire that plugs in the back of my computer. It goes to the router. I've turned off the wireless in the router, and it plugs into the wall. So that's a wired connection. Wired connections, we were saying, much more cyber secure. Basically, there is no secure wireless system. Any wireless system can be hacked, and we're seeing companies being hacked all the time. And now with these wireless systems, we're making our power grid much more vulnerable than it used to be when it was wired and decentralized. We're now centralizing it and making it wireless. It's completely idiotic from a security point of view as well as a health point of view. So we're not even choosing the best solution. We're choosing the solution that they're selling.
Right.
It's not the best solution.
Now,
and there is a better solution in many ways.
Oh, what is it? Wired
connection.
Wired
internet. And even these transmitters, if you really want a transmitter in your refrigerator, you could wire that. You could have a plug-in to your refrigerator that could run to another plug-in that goes to your stove and another plug-in, and you could keep doing that. And the solution is wired connections, especially with vulnerable populations like in schools. I used to be a school social worker, and I can tell you this. Schools are now one of the most unsafe places in the country. In Los Angeles Unified, everyone has an iPad or a tablet. That's 20 to 40 wireless transmitters.
I can't believe that either.
And people need to understand, iPads are two-way microwave transmitters. Yep. Cell phones are two-way microwave transmitters. They're microwaving both in directions. So now in schools, you have 20 to 40 microwave transmitters in one room. You have 2 to 3 routers per room, and then you have each room has the same thing, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 floors on top of each other. So you're talking about some of the most dense exposure to wireless radiation in our schools, exposing the most vulnerable children. Understand this, I get contacted by teachers and students all the time who are getting sick from wireless radiation. If your child complains of headaches when they're at school but they're fine at home, you need to rule out wireless radiation. Make sure he's not sitting near the transmitter at school or not under the transmitter at school. I'm getting contacted by teachers who are developing cancer, sometimes even as little as a year after they put in the transmitters, because unfortunately they're putting the transmitters right over top where the teacher stands because they want to give the teacher, better reception. Unfortunately, they're standing and they're very close to those transmitters, their heads are, and they're getting really exposed. And one teacher said to me, why are we getting cancer and the kids aren't? Which is really an awful thing to say, but anyway. I said, that's because you have lots of previous exposure, and this exposure just put you over the tipping point. Dr. David Carpenter, once they get to this tipping point and they become sensitive or neurologically active, they don't usually go back, And, of course, once you develop a mutated cell that becomes a cancerous cell and it starts mutating, there's no going back, really. So you don't want to use up people's exposure and their cells' ability to fight. And unfortunately, we're using up that exposure in these schools now, and it's absolutely criminal what's happening in our schools, and people should be outraged. And if you look at these websites and you look at the thousands of peer-reviewed studies from very established institutions from around the world, you will say, how could they be doing this? They're simply, and what the industry does is they simply pay everyone. When they walk in, when they roll out a wireless initiative, everyone gets paid. Everyone gets paid to line up, get an order, and shut up about health effects. That's how they're doing it. Understand this. The wireless industry will say, well, the American Cancer Society says that there are no adverse health effects from, wireless radiation. But what's interesting is if you go to the American Cancer Society's website and you look at a press release that was released by their medical chief officer, Dr. Brawley, he talks about a recent study that came out. It was a $25 million study. People can pull it up themselves. Just Google National Toxicology Program Study, National Toxicology Program Study - cell phone, and you'll see the study. This was a $25 million study commissioned by the NIH, and the National Toxicology Program are the ones who went ahead and carried out the study. But sadly, this was a 2-year study, and it was funded 16 years ago. It's a 2-year study. It took them 16 years to start releasing the findings because they knew what were in the findings. The findings showed that wireless radiation, in this case 2G, can cause brain cancer and heart cancer non-thermally in the rats that were exposed. Why is that important? Because according to the FCC, it is impossible for there to be non-thermal effects that can cause cancer. And all these exposures were very carefully controlled to make sure they were non-thermal. So these non-thermal effects showed it. And then the second part, which is rolling out now, shows DNA damage to the rats, which would support the formation of the cancer. And why is this important? Well, because we've had for years, and people should be outraged about this, for years we've had evidence that wireless radiation, specifically cell phones, can cause brain tumors. But we didn't have the animal studies to go with it. And unfortunately, the World Health Organization, in classifying something as a carcinogen, they need to have human studies and they need to have animal studies. Now, you would think if you had the human studies, that should be enough to protect humans. But that wasn't enough. Not when you have the industry involved. We need these animal studies. So this study was commissioned to provide those animal studies. So this study was important because it provided the animal studies to go along with the human study so that we can increase what has already been classified. People need to understand wireless radiation has already been classified as a possible carcinogen by the World Health Organization. That goes along with lead, car exhaust, it's like filling your room with car exhaust. That has already happened in 2011. Just this country has done very little with that information. Now we have enough evidence to increase that classification with the NTP study to a probable, if not a class 1 human carcinogen. If people want to look up Hardell, just punch in Leonard Hardell blog, Leonard Hardell blog. He's a scientist from Sweden who's been doing research and has a group of scientists doing research for decades, and he has now enough studies to show conclusively that wireless radiation should be a class 1 human carcinogen like cigarette smoke, and therefore we should be warning people and minimizing our exposure like we do with cigarette and tobacco. And that's simply not going to happen, as he points out, because the World Health Organization has been compromised, as has the FCC, as has our Congress. What have they done? They formed something called the EMS Project, and this was a group of scientists that were going to review the newest science and look at its implications. Unfortunately, the EMS Project is made up of scientists that are very friendly to industry, and they're the scientists that the industry uses to defend them in lawsuits. And they are from a group called ICNIRP, or the IEEE. Understand this, the World Health Organization, is using ICNIRP standards. Problem is ICNIRP is a self-appointed group of scientists and experts from industry. Why would the World Health Organization, that's supposed to be impartial, use a pro-industry group to look toward their standards and maintain a standard that does not look at non-thermal effects, even though we have thousands of studies and conclusive evidence that cell phones can cause brain tumors. That is because the World Health Organization's number one funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and you can see that on their website. And that is because the Telecommunications Workers Union donated in 2015 $800,000 to the World Health Organization. And that is because they're a compromised organization. And that's how the industry has hidden health effects. And that's why I say it's been such a concerted and careful campaign to hide health effects. Any group that can get in their way or could warn us or protect us from this type of radiation has been compromised. So they look to the World Health Organization. They say, look, the World Health Organization says there's no problem. And the World Health Organization does say there's no problem, even though one of their subgroups, the International Agency for Cancer Research, IARC, found and classified wireless as a possible carcinogen. The overall World Health Organization says there's no adverse health effects, and yet one of their divisions who specializes in cancer research and assessing harm has classified as a possible carcinogen. So they're ignoring their own agency, and they're going with this ICNIRP, this private industry group, who says that there is no evidence of harm, and that there's only thermal effects, and they're ignoring their own agency. It's unbelievable. They also point to the American Cancer Society. Now, what's interesting to the American Cancer Society says, oh, there's no adverse health effects. But yet their chief medical director said that the NTP study was a paradigm shift in how we looked at non-ionizing radiation, that is, this non-thermal radiation, and its effect on cancer. Even though he said that, they say there's no adverse health effects and there's no problem. Well, people need to understand that AT&T is one of the corporate partners for American Cancer Society. They also need to know that Motorola, Amergen, which is an electric company, are two of the 10 corporate CEOs that are part of the Global Advisory Council for the American Cancer Society. So these are agencies that are supposed to represent us and have been compromised by the industry. So this is how they've hidden health effects. And everywhere you go, the people that are supposed to be defending our rights are supposed to be warning us about public health threats and are supposed to be protecting us, have been compromised by the financial support from the industry. And this is not minor financial support. This is major financial support. And this is not often hidden. This is oftentimes very, very openly done. People need to understand that the Republican National Convention was underwritten by AT&T. Now, not to say the Democratic Party isn't funded by industry. One of the top funders for the Democratic Party has been the wireless industry, and they have been beholden to wireless technology. They have ridden wireless technology and their support right into the presidency. Bill Clinton is the one who signed the 1996 Telecom Act and signed those protections that began this whole problem. The Democrats who are supposed to defend children, our communities, our health, have been really the pushers of wireless. And I think about President Obama, recommending cell phones for homeless people and giving away cell phones. They become the salesmen for the industry. They're basically employees of the industry promoting their product. That's the state of affairs we're in right now. We need to hold them responsible. We need to let them know this is not acceptable, that we must be protected. We need to take our Congress back, a high-tech agent that is being very efficiently distributed. Okay? Understand, this is so much worse than tobacco. Tobacco, just so you know, takes about 30 years on average for tumor growth. For wireless radiation, we're seeing 10 years on average. Okay? And that's with one source. Most people are exposed to much more than one source. And with tobacco, if I was smoking on this side my room, if you were on the other side of the wall in the other room, you wouldn't be affected. But with wireless, if I have a wireless router in my room, you're going to be affected on the other side because it's designed to travel and penetrate. So you have a very efficient distributor of a agent that is carcinogenic, neurotoxic, and genotoxic. And I'm not just saying this. I encourage you to look for yourself.
No, I have been feeling those effects. I mean, I picked up this second job just to pick up a little spare cash, and yeah, I'm on my app. I'm hired by an app. So I have to be on the app the whole entire time, and that could be anywhere from, 4 to 8 hours a day. And I get home having headaches, and my hand has been tingling too. And you said that you had somebody else who had her face tingling, but I didn't put two and two together until later on when I was at home. I was like, you know what? He said tingling, and that's weird because now when I hold my phone in my hand, it tingles. So that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And what's interesting is, if you remember the old cell phones, they had the antennas on the top of the phone. They stuck out and away from you.
Oh, yeah, totally. Old
Yeah,
flip
but they
phone thing.
Yeah, they didn't want people to realize that this thing's emitting something that's transmitting in front of them. So they put the antennas in the edge of the phones. So now when you hold the phone, you become part of the antenna. You actually have better reception because they're using you as part of the antenna, but unfortunately, it's transmitting through you. So that tingling you have in your hand, and a lot of people do have tingling in their hands. I have tingling in my hand if I use a cell phone. The FCC says that doesn't exist.
Right.
Because your hand's not being burned.
Oh, no.
But yet you're getting a neurological effect from it. Okay? It's a non-thermal biological effect.
Now,
I
know
it doesn't
that they
exist.
can use those waves, like you said, the Army, and they were using these waves for what now?
Okay, so that's a good point. So for the millimeter waves used by 5G, they're rolling it out and they're banning, like with SB 649 in California, they were going to ban any look at health effects. But the interesting thing is the Army is using it already as a biological weapon. So people can Google active denial system, and it's pretty easy to pull up the videos put out by the Army, and it's on the Defense Department's website.
Yeah, it's a non-lethal
they're quite proud of this
project.
Yeah, it's called the active denial system. And what it does is it takes these microwaves and aims them at crowds for crowd control, and to disperse the crowd. And this is using millimeter waves. This is using 95 gigahertz. And what we're talking about is going from 24 to 90 gigahertz. So we're in the same, band there.
Right.
And the reason it works is what I talked about before, the Israeli study, that your skin acts as little antennae to these millimeter waves. But understand this, they expose people for like a second to these microwaves. It causes a heating effect, and then they want to run away naturally. Now, what we're talking about is not going to generate heating because they're preventing heating, but they're also going to be exposing people continuously for years and years in their home. So the exposure time is much greater. So on the one hand, the FCC says there's no biological interaction, no biological effect. On the other hand, the Army is using it as a biological weapon. So which one is it?
Right, exactly. That's
and on the one hand,
crazy.
The FCC says this is completely harmless. You can wear it on your watch, you can put it up against your head, you can put it in your schools. On the other hand, the insurance industry that is mandated and expert at assessing risk says it's a high-risk agent, and they won't insure it.
That's amazing, too. I mean, how many contradictions do you have to have in order
right,
to...
So who's telling the truth and who's lying?
Right.
What we know about the FCC is they represent industry, and they're profiting in the billions from this, and the trillions from this.
Right.
So you tell me.
And nobody polices them, really. I mean, you say Congress does, but I've never seen the FCC in for any violations of, anything, really.
Well, that's interesting because even the very basic protections we have for cell towers aren't really policed. So the industry knows that if their cell tower in your neighborhood goes over the FCC, standard, which is supposed to prevent heating, no one's regulating this. I think one person got fined in the history of the FCC for having gone over their exposure level,
right.
and that was because
they
were
fined. That's all. That's not taking it down. That's not removing the problem at all. That's give money to the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just to prevent heating. And one of the groups, the Communicator Workers of America, they've long been concerned about this because their workers have to go up and fix these towers. And they used to turn them off when they went to work on them. Now they won't even turn them off.
That's crazy.
So these guys are going up and working on these intense wireless transmitters. Understand, cell towers are your most intense transmitters.
Right.
If studies show that a cell phone to your head for 30 minutes a day, and by the way, one of the ways they've hidden health effects is the way they classify things. They classify 30 minutes a day as heavy use.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, the real heavy users of 3 to 6 hours a day like you,
right,
aren't even being looked at.
No, not
and
at
when
all,
you do,
actually. And I don't think that they're looking at very many of these regulations because they just let this app fly. And there's so many, discrepancies, in the workplace that I know of already that I've called them on. And they've, let's just wipe your slate clean and you won't be bothered by that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a regulatory environment. It's a free-for-all environment. We have tapes of him going on TV denying health effects going back 2 decades. Wow. Tom Watt Wheeler individually has hidden health effects by himself, has led the way. Okay, and for him to be chairman of the FCC this last term, absolutely criminal. The last thing he did was roll out this 5G and basically just open up all the spectrum for use.
Well, it's kind of
with
like
complete
opening up
disregard
the hell
for health
gates,
effects.
it?
Tom Wheeler should be held responsible.
Right.
In the
Isn't
most
it like
severe
opening
way.
up the gates of hell in a way? Like Nikola Tesla, he invented all this stuff so long ago, and none of it got talked about, and none of it got, really claimed except for by the telecommunications industry. And I think that they really jumped on the bandwagon and were like, oh, yeah, we've got to be in, constant communication. So these are the ways that we're going to do it. We're going to use the radio waves,
Oh, yeah. And what's interesting is, the whole move to electric. I mean, these electric vehicles, and I think California has more Priuses than any other state, any other place in the world. But, people are getting sick from electric vehicles. They're sitting on top of a battery, so that produces an electromagnetic field. But the people who have tested these cars have actually shown that it's the electric motor in front that puts off quite a field that people are being affected for, who are getting sick. So, one of the things people can rule out is if you're getting sick and you're getting an illness in general, if you're young, or even if you're not young, and you're getting an illness, the doctors just don't know what it is and they can't find anything and they've done every test, you may want to rule out wireless radiation exposure. It's easy to rule out. Use wired connections. Go dry for a couple weeks. See if you feel better. Some people are going from literally being hospitalized on the brink of death to getting completely better in 3 weeks when they realize it's wireless radiation and they reduce their exposure.
Well, I can tell you straight up. I mean, I used to keep my phone in my purse off of me all the time. People used to get so pissed at me because I wouldn't answer my phone. And I'd be like, well, yeah, it was in my purse. Sometimes I might not look at it all day long, And I went from that to holding my phone for 6 hours a day and having to, look at it and deal with it and be on it. And I mean, I think that in itself gave me a headache. But if it didn't, then certainly the, exposure to the radiation must have, because every single time that I get home.
Probably unconsciously you were making the connection early on, and so you minimized your exposure. But now with your job, you can't really unconsciously minimize. You're now maximizing your exposure. And one of the things is you have 2 phones on when you're at work, you told me.
Yep.
So you definitely want to turn the other phone off because these phones ping to the tower about every 30 seconds. Yeah. So you're getting exposures. So one of the reasons we don't want women to put phones in their bra is they ping to the tower about every 30 seconds. And when they do that, your breast gets a pulse of microwave energy. And remember, when you put a steak in a microwave oven, it sizzles. If you put rice in a microwave oven, it hardly heats.
Don't microwave your boobs, ladies. Come on.
Yeah, so your boobs are more like steaks than rice. Right. They're very absorbent, and so we're seeing young girls getting tumors in the site of their transmitters. So they tuck the phone into the same place in their bra all the time, and they're actually drawing the site of the multifocal tumors. So tumors in lots of different spaces on the bra, in the breast, and they draw a picture of it, and they see the outline of the cell phone and the transmitters. And this has happened. There's more and more reports of this, and these girls are very young, and some of them die from it. Right. So this is very serious. People also need to understand, not just LeBron James got sick. Vice President Biden's son, his son was named Beau Biden. He died at 46 of a brain tumor above his ear. This is the most common place to get a brain tumor from a cell phone. He got it when he was 42. He left 2 children behind. He devastated his family, the community, the whole nation.
It's just amazing how much.
I know people who know the family, and Beau said, "I believe my cell phone caused my brain tumor."
I believe it. I totally believe it, because I don't even like holding the phone to my head. When I talk, I do talk on the speakerphone, and people get pissed off at me for that too. But I also have a wired headset that I'll use as well, and people laugh at me and call me like ancient, but no, I'm sorry. I don't believe that we used to leave our telephones at home, like attached to the wall. And if you wanted to get a call, you'd go home and you'd get the call, Yeah,
you check your messages.
Right.
But you go home and check your messages. But people just need to use a wired headset. Wired headset that keeps the phone, the strongest source, away from their head.
Now, what about all these wireless charging devices and things of that nature that they're coming out with now, like the Alexa Home and, stuff like that?
Okay, so these all wireless systems use microwaves to transmit. You should use wired connections instead of wireless for all of them.
Right.
Wireless speaker systems, wireless security systems. I love watching these security commercials about keep your homes, safe and comfy with our new security system. You're harming your family with that wireless system.
Right.
You're harming your family with that wireless system. Do wired security like we used to do.
Right. Wire some cameras up and wire it to your computer.
The less transmitters, the better.
Right.
Turn off the wireless in your router. Use wired, like you said, use a wired headset with your cell phone. Don't carry your phone in your back pocket. Understand, MD Anderson did a study showing that anal cancer is up close to 100% in children 17 to 25. But it's going down in people 50 and over. And they even say in the study it should be the opposite.
Right.
So I wrote them. I said that's because the kids are putting cell phones in their back pockets and they're pinging to the tower like every 30 seconds.
Right.
And
it totally makes sense.
Cancers. People are like, well, I don't really care. If something bad happens, then I'll change. That's not going to work with this. Okay?
Yeah.
The things you get sick from, this is wireless radiation. The things that you get sick from radiation are things you don't get better from.
Right.
They don't get better from. You have to be smarter. All these smart, and basically anything they call smart is stupid.
Yep. That's
you have
funny.
You have to be smarter.
My smartphone is stuck on stupid mode, so yeah.
I can tell you this, the government doesn't give a crap about your health, and they're selling it off cheap.
Well, they
have to be smarter.
They control you through radio waves, can they not? Already they have that the CERN machine, but it's not the CERN machine. It was what was it called? It was the radioactive. Basically, it was the peacemaker at one point in time.
I don't know about mind control in terms of microwaves.
I'm not talking about mind control necessarily, but I'm just talking about the fact that they can. It's called touchless torture.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just know about the thousands of peer-reviewed science, conclusive science that shows it causes neurological problems to the brain, and causes short-circuiting for the immune system, and causes an increase in cancer. I do know about those things.
Right.
But I know this is powerful technology. In the case of 5G, this is military-grade type of technology that we're bringing into our communities, and we're saying you cannot look at health and safety. You cannot review this. You will have no control of where you put this. I mean, this is truly, truly wrong. You know, you're in California, home to Hollywood. You know, Hollywood, I mean, the Democrats listen to Hollywood. Hollywood has the money and power to change this. Hollywood needs to wake up for this. And I got to tell you this, all you have to do, Hollywood, is look at your own executives. They're dying from brain tumors, and they know it. They're dying from brain tumors, and they know it because they're always on the phone.
Yeah, it's so true.
And they're doing nothing about this. They're not making the connection. And they're funding these representatives that are doing this to us. These transmitters, Hollywood, are coming to your neighborhood, right? And you need to stand up and say no. And you have the power to say no. All these celebrities that want to do good things, they should contact me and help me get the word out and help protect their communities. It's time to stand up and do what you say you do, and be who you say you are.
Right.
So email me 5gharmful@gmail.com, and if you know a celebrity, challenge them to help me.
Yeah.
5gharmful@gmail.com. Let's see who the real humanitarians are. Let's see who the real environmentalists are. What's really sad is the industry has sold this technology in a brilliant way to the environmentalists. The environmentalists are using tons of wireless. They're getting sick.
Oh, yeah.
What have they done? They've said to the environmentalists, we need all these transmitters because we're going to be able to manage consumption by using all these transmitters to watch everything and save the planet.
Wow.
What they don't say is the transmitters themselves are one of the worst environmental and health hazards of our times. And not only are we not talking about it or doing anything to protect it, we're about to make it billions of times worse with 5G.
Well, now they put those
They don't tell
smart
them that.
meters into our houses, you know. Are those giving off wireless radiation as well?
Okay, so let's talk about smart meters. Smart meters, for people who don't know, they're just wireless meters that read your power. Instead of having to come and read the meter, they just drive by and they signal to the person driving by and they take the reading that way. So these were little meters, very low powered, that the industry says transmit very infrequently. Unfortunately, they use the frequency because they don't test these frequencies, and that's what they should do. Right. This is the solution. Wired connections, especially with vulnerable populations, and test your frequencies for bioactivity before you roll them out.
Right.
They're not doing that. They're rolling out all these new 5G spectrum, all these new 5G frequencies. They're not testing them for non-thermal biological effects before they roll them out. It's insane.
So basically, they're basically polluting the air, essentially.
This is definitely a form of air pollution. You just can't see it because it's waves in the air that are making people sick. So that it is a form of air pollution. Wow. They call it electrosmog. Electrosmog. If you Google electrosmog, you'll see quite a bit of information. What was I saying, though?
The smart meters.
Oh, the smart meters. So these things are very low powered, transmit very infrequently. Unfortunately, some of them use frequencies that seem to be very disturbing to the body and neurological systems. And so some people were getting sick within a couple of weeks, especially women who seem to be really absorbent. They started, like you said, headaches, nausea, difficulty sleeping. People would wake up at a certain time of night. That's what's funny, because these things transmit all around 3 in the morning. Right. People say, oh, my God, I wake up the same time every night. I don't know why. I said, well, did you recently get a smart meter? And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? Because it transmits all at the same time every night. So they start getting these neurological effects, and then once they figured it out, they start Googling, and they see all the hundreds of people testifying, testimonies of them getting sick. They realize it's the meter, and then they demand they take it off. So now half the states have opt-outs for smart meters. Half the states, because so many people complained of health effects. So that's the human evidence that wireless radiation can cause neurological effects. Now, the problem with that is 5G is like smart meters on steroids because it's much more powerful. The waves are much more dense. The exposure is and the exposure is not infrequent. It's going to be continuous. And again, it's going to be close to the home.
That's crazy.
and mandatory.
Right. And well, yeah, no, I know they did they came and just put them in, and we didn't really get any say in whether or not we wanted one or not. Kind of like the wireless, cable systems that the cable companies are using now, and also the wireless routers.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a pilot that was in my area when I was in Los Angeles, and they were giving you an opt-out. You could opt out if you didn't want it.
Yeah, no,
The problem
they're
with
not
opt-outs
allowing us to opt out anymore.
Yeah, the problem with opt-outs in apartments too is if you might opt out, but the guy next to you doesn't opt out, you're still being exposed.
Right.
And God forbid, you're the one who's living with all the meters on the back of your wall, right? So if you're in a complex and you've got 30 or 40 meters, and they're on the back of the wall of the person living in that apartment, they're almost guaranteed to get sick.
Right. That's just crazy.
I mean, what they're doing and the fact that they're getting away with it and the systematic way that they've hidden and denied health effects is truly criminal. And the fact that our representatives are not representative, are actually facilitating this and have been paid to look the other way while we get sick is truly criminal. And they need to be held responsible and accountable. But the solution, there is a solution, wired connections. We can still have the internet. The internet is amazing. It's powerful, right? We can have wired connections. We can use fiber optic all the way to the home and then wired connections in the home. The reality is cable companies, represent the solution. Fiber optic to the home with cable inside the home. Everything connected wired. Safe, secure, faster, healthier.
Right. And
we have the solution. And not wireless. We have the solution with a minimization of wireless and a maximization of benefits with a minimization of exposure. What we're doing now is a maximization of wireless with a maximization of exposure.
Well, yeah, they're taking away all of our landlines, essentially.
Yeah, they're taking away the landlines and it's a solution. It's like when they used to have, railroad trains and stuff, and they took them up so that people would drive more.
Right.
That's what's happening. They're forcing people over to wireless, forcing people to maximize their exposure, and taking away the safe alternative.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's unfortunate.
And they know it.
Yeah, I know
they know what they're doing.
I know they know it.
They used to have a law that mandated that everyone, have a landline to their home. That was the law.
Right.
And the FCC has changed that so that now if there's a wireless alternative, whether it's good or not, whether it's quality or not,
right, and they
can pull up your landline and force you over to wireless. So your community, you start being desperate for communications. You push your community to put more towers up,
right,
so they can sell more of their products. Because the people making the rules are the people benefiting from the rules.
Of course.
And that's the FCC.
Of course. See, I knew it.
But it's the Senate that approves all those members of the FCC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
And it's our elected official, it's our president who nominates the chairman of the FCC.
Who polices the FCC? I mean, is there anybody that does so?
So people should contact me to help out, and if they want to fight back and push back, and especially if people are sick.
Okay,
we need to hear from you because you are the evidence.
What you just said, because you got cut off there, and I don't want you to cut out because I know that was important information that you just said to me.
What I said is people should contact me, okay, especially if they're sick, because sick people are the evidence. Unfortunately, they're experimenting with our health, and when you get sick, you're the evidence of the problem. In this country, they've squeezed off most of the funding for wireless radiation research. The government is not going to be doing studies and fund studies on wireless radiation health effects and be forcing wireless into the schools.
That's really funny because they fund the telecommunications industry pretty much. You can get grants for radio, and each city has funding for the telecommunications and the wireless and also the wired networks.
Now I've been at conferences put on by the Wireless Association, and they say they want to use the stick and the carrot approach. That is, the stick is laws that say that you can't do anything about this.
Right.
And the carrot approach is they pay the local governments to do this to you.
Wow.
The stick and the carrot. They say to the local government, you have to do this, and they put a time clock on it. But they also say, hey, we'll give you some extra money for some other stuff too.
Right.
So they use the stick and the carrot, and they say it openly.
Right, and they give grants and federal funding for all sorts of stuff, especially like community radio and community telecommunications, ways for people to stay in touch. So
yeah, but yet they can't find funding for research on biological effects. They can't find funding to test these frequencies for non-thermal biological effects before they roll them out.
Yeah, they rolled out all this stuff, and they didn't even know what like the 10-year, the 20-year, the 30-year effect was going to be on it.
Absolutely. And, they don't have funding to go and monitor the cell towers, make sure they're not exceeding the FCC guidelines they have.
Right.
They can't do that either. The solution is, you have transmitters, but not transmitters on top of businesses. No.
Right.
And not transmitters on top of homes.
Right.
And not transmitters in parks and on schools and things like that. As far away as possible and still functioning. This is a very flexible technology, and we could develop a technology that took into account health and accommodated it, but health is being left out. It's not a variable being considered. What's being considered is frequencies that carry lots of data, that penetrate well, and travel long distances. What it does to your body when passing through it is not taken into account. People should wonder, why is it when I get on an airplane, they tell me to turn off my cell phone because it's going to crash the plane and basically cause interference with electrical devices?
However,
but yet that's not going to cause any interference with the guy sitting next to me?
Right. Or me myself as I'm holding
or me myself. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
Either this cell phone is so powerful it can crash the plane, or it's completely healthy and it's okay to put it in my ear, on my wrist, next to my home, in my schools. Which one is it?
Neither.
Somebody's lying.
Right. Neither, really. I think neither, personally. Okay, well, I totally would go on with you about this for hours and hours and hours on end, and I hope that you do get in touch with me again so that we can do this. But I am going to have to wrap it up, so I want everybody to be able to get in contact with you if they need to, and also to be able to look up this information for themselves, because this is some very serious stuff that we are all being subjected to right now. And we really don't have very much choice in the matter as far as that goes. We do, and we can stop it, but we aren't because of the way that technology has gone nowadays,
Yeah, and understand this. People need to reach to the federal level.
Yeah.
Reaching out to your local city council, your state officials is not enough.
Right.
Okay, you can reach to your state officials, that's something, but this is a federal problem. 5G is being pushed by the FCC and the industry and being pushed by Congress. Your reach out needs to be to them. You need to go to Washington and talk to the representatives and say, this is unacceptable. This must stop.
Is there
it's
one
not
representative
okay to continue to microwave us.
Is there one representative in particular that is favoring this particular,
The Democrats are strongly in favor of this. They've been corrupted.
Right.
They've been sold a bill of goods.
Is there one in favor, in our favor, as far as that goes? One that doesn't, one that we could contact that could possibly be a voice for all of us.
I'm still looking for that one person.
You are.
I'm still looking for that one person. If you find them, email me.
Right.
So my email is 5gharmful@gmail.com, 5gharmful@gmail.com. But understand this, California represents one of the largest and strongest economies in the world.
Right.
Hollywood represents some of a concentration of political power and strength. It's time to use our economic resources, our political resources, and say no to this technology. It's time to wake up. There's a reason your family and friends are getting sick, okay? It's because we're microwave poisoning people, and this 5G is going to make the problem exponentially worse.
Yeah, I agree.
And we need to reach out to Congress, and you need to go there. You need to talk to them. You need to talk to as many as you can. You need to hold them responsible. You need to use your financial resources to make a difference. You have to wake up. They are lying to you. The fact that your hands tingle when you hold the cell phone is the core of the basic lie. This has a biological effect non-thermally. You're not being protected by that. If it's affecting your hand when you hold it, imagine these transmitters transmitting throughout your home. You might not be feeling them, but your cells are feeling them because they're billions of waves per second. They're closing down and being affected.
Now, I want
Long
to touch
term,
on
this
something.
is very unhealthy.
I don't know if you've seen it or not, but these two girls did a study. They put seeds next to a wireless transmitter and then seeds inside of a microwave, and didn't microwave them, obviously, but were protecting them from any of the waves that the transmitter was putting off, and showed the development and the growth of the seeds over, a portion of time, basically, and the ones that were right next to the wireless transmitter did not grow, and the ones that were inside the microwave did.
Absolutely. We have studies showing this is affecting all living things, okay? Because we're all living things are electromagnetic. We are letting them play and experiment with the basic building blocks of how living things work, okay? And it needs to stop. We have evidence it's affecting the bees, because birds and bees, they navigate, they communicate electromagnetically. And these billions of unnatural waves per second is affecting them, their nesting, their returns. We have environmental reports showing this.
I imagine they probably affect the sharks and whatnot, too, because those
the dolphins, and
the
birds, the bees, the dolphins, nature, plants, really everything. I focus on humans because I'm trying to focus on, hopefully ourselves. We're selfish enough to look at this, but it's affecting the environment. If you care about the environment, you need to do something about this. If you care about your pets, these are animal studies that are being done that are showing health effects. If you care about your pets and they're sleeping near the transmitters, you should think again.
Right.
If you don't care enough about yourself, do it to protect your pets in your house.
Indeed.
You know what? If you don't care enough about cancer, understand this. This stuff bangs up your cells. It ages your cells. It's going to make your skin look older.
Yeah.
If you don't care about cancer, care about how you look, it's going to make you look older. You want to be healthier and happier looking. Minimize your wireless. Don't hold a wireless transmitter up to your face.
And definitely don't have one in your bedroom. Don't be, Yeah,
when you go to sleep at night, don't put the phone by your bed. It pings every 30 seconds. It's going to interrupt your sleep, the quality of sleep. We've shown reductions in melatonin for decades. That's not new news. Okay? Just put it on airplane mode. The phone, it still works. The clock still works.
Right.
Move everything away from. Use an old-fashioned alarm clock.
Exactly.
Okay?
Like go old-fashioned with these things, guys.
And these new phones that have these wireless chargers, they're using magnets on the back. So you have low-frequency electromagnetic fields in the back. You have high-frequency electromagnetic fields being emitted by the wireless. They are basically like little killing machines. This is very harmful stuff. It takes very, very low-powered magnetic fields to cause biological effects.
Right.
And now they have them on these wireless charging in the back. Just plug your phone in. The fact that iPhones don't allow headsets, is my understanding anymore, is criminal.
Yes. This is something that disturbs me deeply because Apple is the evil empire, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's evil. Just ask Steve Jobs if wireless is safe.
Right.
He died from pancreatic cancer, which used to be rare, but not when you have wireless devices on your waistband.
Right.
And he was known to carry around lots of devices and to be testing them all the time. Okay? He should be our poster child for the problem.
That's
true. And Apple continues to push wireless using a wired headset. Bluetooth is not good. It still transmits. And you put that Bluetooth transmitter right in your ear. Understand this. Your ear is a hole in your head, and those microwaves go right down, and it's a straight shot into your brain.
Right.
Understand that's the worst place to hold a microwave transmitter, to your ear.
Right. The closest place to damage your brain, essentially. Yeah.
Absolutely. And understand this. Brain cancer is now the #1 cancer for children 15 to 19. Thank you, wireless industry. It wasn't that way when wireless began.
That's crazy. That you have so many facts, and I would love to continue to talk to you and pick your brain for days upon days. If anybody else would like to get in touch with Kevin here and speak with him about these effects, if you have these effects, if you are experiencing this kind of thing, if you feel that you need to reach out to somebody, he is definitely somebody to reach out to. Tell him your email again, Kevin.
Yeah, and we need your help. We need your resources. We need your skills. This is basically David against Goliath. This is financial might against right. This is time to stand up and help out. This is a
good
team
for
effort.
all humankind, basically, against the tyranny of evil.
I mean, it really is, and I'm not one to tend toward hyperbole, but I have to tell you, this is absolute evil. To give people cancer, to expose people to a technology that causes cancer, I can't think of anything more evil.
Right.
Having known people that have gone through and died from cancer, I can't imagine anything more evil. To give people neurological effects to the point they can't work and have to leave their homes, what could be more evil? So my email is 5G, just the number 5G, harmful @gmail.com. 5G harmful @gmail.com. We need your help. California's always been on the leading edge of protecting the environment, about caring for each other, about doing the right thing. We need you more than ever.
Right.
We need you more than ever. Unfortunately, California is also where the industry is located that is pushing this technology hard.
Right. It's very
We need to push back. We need to take back.
Definitely.
We need to take back our community. We need to protect ourselves. This isn't really this isn't an issue for the other guy on the other side of the tracks. This is coming to your house. You can't ignore it. This is now your problem.
This
The
will be in your living room.
FCC is about to make this your problem.
Right. This will be in your living room within the next
in a very
year.
intense way. This will be in front of your house.
Right. Essentially. If you guys want more facts and information, you need to find more facts, you can go to the bioinitiative.org and check that out, definitely.
Bioinitiative.org, saferemr.com, Environmental Health Trust. Those are 3 websites with tremendous amounts of information in one place, and you can get caught up and understand the issue very quickly.
And yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to check out the stuff that the Army was checking out and stuff like that, I looked up. What did you tell me to look up? It was basically non-lethal weapons project is what popped up immediately as soon as I went to look up anything. And that has some amazing information there as well. And there's a lot of sites to go check out, you guys. Kevin, I'm sure
and by the way,
have more.
These frequencies are non-lethal if you use them like they're using them in an instant. But if you have them in front of your home all day long, I mean...
Yeah, all day and all night, every day, and they're pinging every 30 seconds.
Yeah, and the plan is they're going to put them in the public right-of-way. So if you have a home and you have a yard and there's a sidewalk, on the other side of the sidewalk is where all the gas lines and run stuff.
Right.
That's the public right-of-way. They can just put the transmitter up there. And for some people, those sidewalks are like 8-10 feet from their windows, and they're going to be transmitting right into the window. So, this is a terrible thing to do in cities where things are very dense and close together. There'll be very, little opportunity to avoid these waves.
Yeah. Now, I mean, is there any way that you can protect yourself? Like, as far as, I know we can go wired as far as that goes, but I mean, shield your body?
Yeah, you have to be careful with shielding, and there are some sites for shielding. There's something called Less EMF. They sell all types of shielding materials, and there's something out of Canada, Safe Living Technologies, SLT, Safe Living Technologies. But understand this with shielding. Be very careful. Most of the people who are electrosensitive or neurologically sensitive don't like using shielding because it's a double-edged sword. It blocks some of the waves, but it also attracts to a degree some of the waves because it uses metals and stuff to shield and block the waves, but those metals also attract waves, and they also rebound. Some of the waves rebound off of those. So it's tricky. If you're really sick, you can try it, and you'll know if it makes you feel better or not. But if you're not sick, you have to be very careful because you won't know if it's making you sick. So the best cure is prevention and reduction. We know distance is good. We know less exposure is good, and so that's why this rollout of 5G that's designed to maximize exposure close up and so continuously is such a bad idea, and really flies in the face of everything we know about keeping people safe. So that's why we have a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Contact your Congress, contact your public official,
Contact your congressman. Contact your senator. Try to contact your president. Don't be afraid to give money. This is a pay-to-play system. That's the way it is. Pay to get meetings. Go talk to them. Hold them responsible. Go to D.C. Talk to as many officials as you can. This is happening. There's 535 people that need to be educated and held responsible in Washington that are basically terrorizing the rest of the country. I always say the FCC, there's 5 commissioners there that are basically being allowed to electromagnetically terrorize this country. And we need to go to the 535 guys who control them. Yeah. And of those 535, there's 2 committees that oversee the FCC. And you need to go and talk with them. That's where the problem is.
And these committees are?
Oh, well, there's the Energy and Commerce Committee in the Senate, and there's a similar named one in the House. It's pretty obvious when you look at it, the committees. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, definitely. Everybody get out there and, do something about this, because this is definitely something that's going to have to happen to all of us.
Yeah. Minimize your personal exposure with wired connections, headsets, not putting it on you, and wired internet at home. At least turn your Wi-Fi off at night for when you sleep and your body rests and recovers. Tell other people about this. Don't keep this a secret. People really are getting sick from this. If you talk to 10 people, you'll find 2 or 3 that are sick.
Yeah.
So start talking to people about it. And to prevent the 5G, unfortunately, you're being forced into action. You must reach out to Congress and the federal level. There's no way around it. That's why, I'm here in D.C. talking to them.
You're there right now?
Last week with experts from Canada, scientists and physicists that were explaining to representatives, themselves. And what's interesting is I really believe, this is kind of the worst of America. That is putting profit above people's personal health. That's really America at its worst. But I think, we need to bring out America at its best. That is communities coming together and saying no, taking back the Congress, taking back our power, taking back our ability to take care of ourselves. And I think that can be America at its best. We need America at its best right now.
Right. Let's make America great again, right?
Yeah, hell yeah. Let's really do it.
Right.
Let's really do it.
There's some ways that you can do it, and this would definitely be one of them, for sure.
Yeah, it's really sad when I hear, environmentalists so clueless about this. When I get people that are normally very, pro-health, using tons of wireless themselves. I mean, using wireless to measure your health stats, like with Fitbits and stuff, is completely absurd.
Right.
I was out to dinner with a friend of mine, and she says, I'm not really sleeping that well. And I said, well, how do you know you're not sleeping that well? Oh, I got this. She was a data person for her company. She goes, well, I got this Fitbit, and it tells me all my sleeping statistics. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, let me ask you something. When did you start having sleeping problems? Was it about when you got that Fitbit?
Right.
She said, yeah, how did you know? So this is as absurd as it's getting, is that it's measuring the problems it's causing.
Right.
To use this for health is completely ridiculous.
And
But that's
the
what's happening. We're putting
environmentalists
cell
always
towers
talk
on
about
hospitals.
that carbon footprint, I think this is probably one of the bigger carbon footprints that is totally invisible, that nobody's even paying attention to.
When you consider all the energy it takes to run these transmitters and all these servers it's going to take to manage this data, you're talking about a huge carbon user. No one wants to talk about that.
Right.
When you're talking about that wireless, when you have a wired connection, all that energy is being focused and used for its purpose. When you use wireless, it sprays in the environment. Very little of it's being used.
Right.
Okay, wireless systems are very energy inefficient.
Right.
Because they just spray
kinda,
everywhere.
Yeah, it's like a shotgun.
Yeah, but
shell.
no one wants to talk about that. Instead they're saying, "Oh, how this is going to save the environment, save energy, and conserve energy." It's complete ridiculousness. These smart meters were supposed to help us manage consumption and save money. They never did.
Right.
It was a complete lie to sell transmitters. 5G is a complete farce and lie.
Yeah. And it's something that's being pressed upon the American people like it's nothing, like it's supposed to be good, like this is going to help us. So
this is being forced upon you. This is being shoved down your throat.
Right.
SB 649 was designed to tie your hands to protect your home. There was no question about it. That's what it was designed to do. Luckily, Governor Brown vetoed it, but he vetoed it saying, I don't have any issues with, the proliferation of small cells. I just have an issue with this bill. Why? Because it was also going to limit the amount that local governments could charge for rent for these cell tower transmitters. And he didn't want to choke them off of their funding stream because it's all about the money.
Right, because he's selling air.
Yeah, and they didn't want to be limited. And I loved it because the industry was using their political muscle like they've done to us to expose us to this harmful agent. They were saying to local governments, hey, you're not going to be able to charge what you want. You're only going to be able to charge a very minimal amount, the cost. You're not going to be able to even cover your costs. Too bad. And they were forcing it on the local governments. I loved it because the local governments have been selling off our health in order to get rents for these transmitters.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And convincing us that it's good all the while.
And that's the only reason it was vetoed, I believe.
Wow.
It wasn't to protect our health or protect the rights of citizens. It was to protect the revenues of local governments.
Of course. It was.
And they're going to work out a new bill where they get a little higher rate this time, and that thing's going to pass, and you're going to have a transmitter right in front of you.
Yeah, of course they will, because, it's the push of the government. That's what they are pushing for, is to be bigger and better all the time.
Yeah, this is clearly abuse of power. This is them forcing this on us. This is a stripping away of our rights.
Yeah.
This is an epitomization of everything most people believe against.
Right, and yet they're being fooled by flashy new iPhones and the fact that you can be connected in a heartbeat.
If they would warn people about the health effects of that fancy new iPhone, you know what? They wouldn't sell as many, and people certainly wouldn't use them the way they use them, and people would demand that they emit less radiation. Those iPhones are some of the highest emitting phones there are.
Yeah, I imagine they probably wouldn't be waiting in line for 2 days either to get the new one.
And they wouldn't be giving them to their kids to play with.
Right.
And they wouldn't be giving them to their kids to play with, knowing how dangerous they were.
Right.
But instead, we're putting these wireless transmitters in our schools and demanding they have wireless tablets.
Yeah. And that's amazing to me, too, because, I used to get a broken back from carrying all those books way back when. And I used to complain about it. But now I think back and I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of glad I had to carry those books. It made me stronger, and I don't have cancer now.
Yeah, but I can tell you this. The kids are sick. They're not sleeping well. Okay? They got headaches and neurological problems. They have lots of psychological problems because this stuff is neurotoxic. I mean, it causes neurological problems.
Yeah.
Right? And the parents are wondering, why do my kids have all these allergies? Have you seen the young kids and how many allergies they have now?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But remember, we're keeping these transmitters near our stomach, right? And we're microwaving the lining of our stomach. Okay? And our stomach is always, lining's always changing cells. Right? So it's developing sensitivities. That's why when you go to the place, people have like a long list of allergies now.
Yeah.
Because we're microwave radiating our intestines.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I used to wait
Yeah.
tables and people would come up with these, crazy allergies, and I'd be like, okay, well, all right, no problem. I'll deal with that. But, I always
Right.
wondered, why is everybody all of a sudden gluten? This is a new thing. And
When did this happen? Yeah. And then you
celiac,
combine it
yeah.
with immune system problems for women. I think women are even more absorbent, and this is my theory, because women are more like steaks.
Right.
And they're just absorbing more of this wireless radiation, and they're holding it
Well, because
longer.
we're always gaining, retaining, and then losing water.
Yeah, it agitates water molecules. Women will have more water.
Yeah.
I'd say fat too, but women get very upset. You shouldn't say that. Just say
Right.
water. Okay.
I'd say water gain and loss, and the fact that we're filtering water through our systems all the time is definitely something to do with it.
And if people want to look up the Baby Safe Project, they focus on pregnant women, because pregnant women are all water and fat, right? When
Right.
you're pregnant.
Right.
And so when you hold that phone up to, when you hold your phone up to near your stomach, it's absorbing and holding so much of this microwave energy.
So,
And
like,
UCLA
we're
actually
frying
did
our
a study.
embryos? So we're frying our embryos, essentially?
Absolutely. And understand this, UCLA did a study, Dr. Kiffet, Khifet, that was a repeat of a study that was already done in Europe, showing that pregnant women that used cell phones had children with more behavioral problems. And this was a repeat of a study that was done in Europe already that showed the same results. So Yale did a study using rats, showing that rats that were exposed to regular cell phone radiation had infants that were more what would consider hyperactive and had more neurological disorders. So yes, pregnant women, of course, are most vulnerable. And in the case of microwave exposure, they're expected to absorb and feel much more of the effects, and the embryo is being affected. We have a scientist from Harvard, a pediatric neurologist from Harvard named Dr. Martha Herbert, and if you go to the Bioinitiative report, there's more information, that believes that wireless radiation is the trigger for autism and Asperger's epidemic, for a couple reasons. First of all, no environmental hazard has increased as fast as the autism epidemic, then wireless radiation exposure. And she wrote 2 papers on it, and she's an expert in autism, and she said the changes in the brain for autism and the changes of the brain from EMF exposure, and she said they're so parallel, the chances of them not being associated is very unlikely. So these autistic and Asperger's children may be the mutated children from wireless radiation exposure. Most likely it's from the father's sperm being exposed, and we have plenty of evidence, very easy studies done, showing that sperm is affected by wireless radiation. You put a laptop on the lap of a male for just a half an hour, you measure sperm before exposure, and you measure it afterwards, you see sperm mutation and death pretty easily. So it's most likely the male sperm being microwaved during the day that is causing these kind of, these birth, defects.
Right.
Or it could be the women's ovaries, because the husband brings home a lot of technology and they're exposed. What we do
Well,
see...
yeah, if the husband's watching porn all day, then definitely that's going to be the problem.
Okay. But what we do know is that there are Asperger's and autism clusters in high-tech areas.
Yeah.
So they're looking at the genetics of the parents, but what they should be looking at is the EMF exposure instead.
Wow.
So...
Yeah, I'm looking over this study over here that you had sent to me, and it mentions the cornea, it mentions the skin, it mentions your carcinogens, it mentions, all of your physical effects of surface heating and wave radiation. Yes, wave irradiation in humans, basically. It affects your blood flow, it affects your brain flow, it affects, pretty much everything.
Yeah, Dr. Magna Havas from Canada, made the correlation that, in terms of Wi-Fi in the schools, a week of Wi-Fi for children is like putting your child in a microwave oven for 2 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the equivalent. And that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, if you microwave us, it has effects on all systems of our body. And are we really that surprised by it? I mean, it's like the industry has done an amazing job separating the technology and its obvious convenience from how it works.
Right.
And they separated the people who are getting sick now from the technology.
Right.
They've kept it divided. I mean, most people haven't heard about LeBron James, salivary gland tumor.
Right. I hadn't
But you weren't
heard about
supposed
that.
to hear about it.
I
you weren't
hadn't heard
supposed to.
about it.
Only a couple people wrote articles, and one of the articles is by a guy who wrote a biography on him, and he says, why isn't anyone else writing about this? This guy wears the wrong T-shirt. It's international news. This guy had a tumor that could have killed him. It was a non-malignant, but it took 6 hours to take out of his jaw, and it's located near some very important arteries.
Right, and it wasn't even mentioned at all.
Nope, and that's how people need to understand. Oh well, if this was so bad, especially I found that Caucasian males just can't believe that the government would do this to them, right? But understand this, they say, well, if this was so bad, there'd be lawsuits. No, well, the 1996 Telecom Act, in saying that local governments could not look at environmental, it's been expanded to look at health and safety, also included lawsuits, because if you can sue regarding health and safety of these cell towers near your house, then there's no real use having an exemption. So you can't sue for health effects after 1996. And since we know it takes 10 years for tumor growth, you can imagine how much sickness there's been since 1996. So they really can't. And people say, well, if this was so bad, I would have heard about it.
No,
okay?
Not really.
Well,
not
actually,
really.
I try to run stories in the media all the time. It's very difficult because one of the top advertisers for these outlets is wireless. And they don't want to compromise a huge revenue source for one story.
Right.
They're simply not willing to take that risk. And so that's how they keep a story like LeBron's quiet.
Because because I don't have a wireless sponsor, so we're good.
Yeah, we're good. That's good.
Definitely. I'm going to put up all of the links on my site as well. You can go to the number one Steph Sheppard, StephSheppard, and pick up all of the links to all of these sites and the information that you can get from this. I will also put up your email as well, Kevin, which is 5gharmful@gmail.com. If anybody has any information for him, if you've been feeling the effects, if you have funding, if you have resources, definitely contact him there. And I thank you very, very much for all of your information today, Kevin, because I know that it's very late where you are right now.
Well, listen, I'm all about protecting people's health, especially the children. Yeah. And we don't want the children to get sick. This is not the kind of world we want to leave to our children. So this is time to look outside yourself, take care of yourself, but also look outside yourself, because this isn't good for our communities. We're going in the wrong direction, and we need to change direction and change it fast. And the corruption and influence the industry has had over this issue, it has to stop. It's time.
Yeah,
it's overdue.
I do agree, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for joining me today on my show. And we definitely took up the whole 2 hours, so that's great. And also, it was very informative, and I appreciate your information and feedback, because I was having a tough time figuring out what was causing my headaches there for a minute.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Please run the show as much as you can.
I will.
Please share this with others, and we have to take care of one another.
Absolutely.
And we have to do the right thing, because that's exactly what's not happening.
Yeah, I do agree. I definitely do agree.